straightening one part of the body to bend another part. So my arm is straightening, and that's bending the spine. Turn the head away so that you get a real sense that this extension has come all the way from the spine. The shoulder blade is part of the arm in the same way that the hip bone is part of the leg. As the hand goes up, let it brush the back of the head, so it's directing some energy from that back brain point up. Now reaching forwards with it. Now the spine is twisting, shoulders turning against the hips. Let the head turn even further than the shoulders. So again, we get this sense that the arm is coming from the back. One hand forwards, the other elbow right back. You reach forwards, twist the arm as much as you can. So the palm is actually looking up, but from underneath. Back to prayer for a moment. And then up and out. And then turn one hand to face down. And then just turn the head towards the hand that's looking up. And then turn the head the other side and twist the arms as you do so. The hand you're turning towards is the one that's looking up. And try and get the back hand to twist even further. So both palms are facing up, but the back hand is from underneath. Quite quickly, it's not just your head that's turning, it's your shoulders as well. Front arm, the one you're turning towards, has the attacking spiral, the supinating spiral, and the one you're leaving behind has the pronating spiral, the yielding spiral. And the arms up again. And back down. Feel the elbows trying to push forwards, and that pulling your shoulder blades apart. And then let's just take it down here again. when John taught us meditation, I think it was during the long form, the thing he appeared most strict about was the shape of the arms. So what he said you had to guard against was the hands dropping down into the lap and the elbows falling in. The elbows, again, are trying to move forwards, and that's pulling the shoulder blades apart. And as they do move forwards, the hands drift up. When I meditate with Jishin, she always has a cushion on her lap so that her hands can rest on it so that they don't drop down. But if you get it strong from the back, then the hands can easily just stay up. They're not that heavy. They don't get tired. So what John said is imagine like a bicycle tire, and that's just wrapped around your neck. It's like a continuous hoop. The arms pulling from the spine. And now let's try. So if you've got the stick, you can use the stick. Otherwise, just the hands, just pulling and pushing. So linking the fingers and just gently pulling them apart. We just want a feeling that we're a bit stretchy. We can sort of stretch the fingers, stretch the arms. And we want that feeling to get into the heart. So it's operating upon the chest area. Want to really feel the arms coming from the heart. The head is always wanting to claim them. And then reversing. So now I'm pushing my two hands together, twisting them, working them against each other. And pulling. Our word tension comes from the Latin tendere, which just means to stretch. And this is how we want to feel tension. Good tension. A stretching, I'm pulling like a piece of elastic that's being stretched. And then when I push, it doesn't feel that much different, even though now I'm compressing. There's another part of me that's stretching. So I'm pushing the hands together, but my shoulders are stretching apart. And then when I pull the hands apart, my shoulders are trying to pull together. Pushing. And then one more pulling. And then one more pushing. sit for a minute with the arms behind the back. This is really important. It's like the opposite of having the elbows forwards and the hands like this. This will tend to make the spine collapse forwards. And this just brings the heart back up. Let's start with some of the heart qigong. Reaching to embrace, bringing the world into the heart, and then really extending upwards and letting that separate and fall down. Hands extending upwards, heels extending down into the ground equally. And here the arms reaching out and the shoulder blades separating to bring the arms into a roundness. Even though the hands are coming in, my shoulder blades are separating. And now extending up, with the hands extending down with the heels, and slowly it relaxes. Extending into a straight line. And that is pulling my shoulder blades together. Then here I'm extending into a circle, into an embrace, and that is pulling my shoulder blades apart. But this is more like the extension of yoga, creating straight lines. And this is more like the extension of Tai Chi, extending into circles, into containers. Feel the spine. So this really arches your back. The front center's opening, and this will tend to bow you forwards. The back center's opening. I want to sense that my arms are reaching behind something. Imagine another person in front of you, and your arms are trying to reach behind them, and then bring them in. And here I'm just extending, I'm creating a straight line that extends up, but also down. And the more straight that line, the more curved my spine has to be. The more it has to arch. Come into riding horse. So here I've stretched into roundness. It's most obvious in the arms because you can really feel the shoulder blades having pulled away from the spine. But we want the same sense in the legs. Like my legs are trying to relax away from the sacrum. The hips are trying to drift apart. And in the same way that the shoulder blades drifting apart brings my hands towards each other, it's the same in the legs. The more I can relax across my sacrum, the more my feet will hug the ground and try and pull towards each other. And I want the same feeling here. Imagine these two arms that have come out of the back of the head and around. So the back of the head, the occiput, feels like it's really stretching across. And the eyes will tend to draw in and cross. But you're trying to look at the tip of your nose. And then let's just try that. Really the two circle exercise. Catching the wing and bringing it around. You can think of the wings as just extensions of the shoulder blade. And then let it become the pulling in the rope, reaching forwards and pulling in. Feel the three parts of the arm. So my hand starts moving out, elbow, and then finally my shoulder comes away from my spine and extends into the hand. But by the time that happens, the hand is already coming back, because when you release the shoulder blades, your arms become round. And then turning back is just catching that loop. Shoulder, and then I catch it. So as the hand starts coming out, I've got this supinating spiral, so this attacking spiral. And then as the elbow, the short elbow becomes involved, it starts turning the other way and becomes the yielding, the pronating spiral. You can just think of it as the figure of eight. So as you come up the figure of eight, you've got the attacking spiral. And as you go over the top and down, you've got the yielding spiral. And we want to try and feel it in the leg as well. Leg's more difficult because the foot is stuck on the ground. Feel the same sort of release of my hip from my sacrum, at the same time that my shoulder blade is releasing from my spine. So to get that looseness here, I really need to free up the foot a little bit, lifting up the heel and also the sort of wobbly knee. So I need to get everything in the supporting leg so that the other side that's reaching can free up. Feel it coming from the back heart. That's relatively easy, but feel it coming from here as well. Like it goes back, comes out of the sacrum, goes back, and then comes around. They all do that. This comes out and then comes around. Now let's breathe. Just trying to get it breathing from the legs. When you do the breathing out phase and pulling the hands in, get the legs to pull yourself down into them. So here my legs are bending, and that's taking me down. And then here they can straighten. Bending the legs to suck my spine down into them. Good. Now, feeling the spine in the middle, and I'm just turning around it. I don't really want my spine to move side to side too much. And I want to feel what the legs are doing to make this happen. It's the same as what we normally do with the straightening and the pulling and the pushing. So this leg starts pulling, and that will draw me back to the front. And then this leg starts pushing to push this hip round. But this leg also has to start pushing to stop the effort of this leg moving me across, because I want to keep my spine in the middle. So when I come back to the front, it's because this leg is pulling me. And then when I turn to the side, it's because this leg is pushing me. And then very quickly, this one starts pushing as well. And then you get a strong turn. And it's just the breathing exercise, but with the turn. So as you're breathing in and opening up the front, you're turning to the side. And as you breathe out and bring the hands together, you're turning back to the front. I want to feel the legs, feel it coming from the action of the legs. and the importance of the front leg. So this leg straightening. So we haven't really looked at that much. And my empty leg is moving me, whether it's empty here because it's pulling, or whether it's empty here because it's pushing. And my full leg is trying to stop me from moving. It's trying to keep me still. So this leg now is straightening, not in order to push me in that direction, but simply to keep me there, keep me in the middle. This leg starts pulling to move me round. This leg starts pushing to make it turn. And then this leg is just bracing really to stop me from falling to the side. The active leg is always the emptying or the emptier leg. Feel the leg that's straightening. Not just the leg that's straightening, it's the toes. Toes are extending. And exactly if you're going to grab an object, you'd reach your hand towards it, the fingers extended. And then as you clasp it, your fingers would wrap around it and you'd beginning to make a fist. It's the same in the foot. My foot is extending, toes are straightening and splaying, and then I grab the ground, I grip with the toes, and that is the beginning of the pull. And then just turning now and letting the arms wrap around. But I want to keep the legs the same. What I want is to really turn. So I'm turning so strongly that the arms are being drawn into me by my turning. So when I finish turning here, they're really wrapped around me. The backhand has come right around and the front hand has come across the shoulder almost. And I want to feel that coming from the turning. Trying to keep my spine stationary. I'm just revolving around it. And then the second warm up. Now my spine is moving backwards all the time. I still want this real strong sense of turning and the arms wrapping around my body. Feel the centripetal, the draw towards the center. Something in me has to be quite determined to stop these hands flying off as tangents to my circle. And that's just the Dan Qian. Pull with the leg. This leg has to pull me. I'm pulling the ground to bring me into it, but that pull is also pulling my sacrum, this side of my sacrum, down into it. What we want to get away from is this feeling of having settled onto the ground. If you do that, then your weight is going to compress you against the ground and everything will become squashed. It's the problem with sinking. Here, I'm using this leg, I'm pulling myself into it, not so that I can settle on the ground, but so that this whole limb can become stretched open. I want the sense that I'm sucking my spine, this side of my spine, down into the leg. It's very similar to when we were doing this. We're using the legs to pull the spine down. It's the same here, but just one at a time. So in a sense, it's easier. Drawing my spine down into the ground. Being sucked down, partly by my leg, but also just by the ground itself. The ground is trying to suck me into it. Without this sort of work, we never develop a root. Here, I want to sink into it so that something can flow up into my opposite arm. I'm tapping the energy of the ground. This feeling of the tentacle, something has come out here and is really reaching down. back to riding horse. And then the same thing here, in the same way that my arm tentacles are reaching from my spine down into this roundness. It's easy for them because they're not having to support my weight. I want the same feeling that these two tentacles of energy have come out of my sacrum and are reaching down into the ground and trying to pull the ground up. In other words, pull me down into it. We're so used to propping ourselves up from the ground by doing this. It's a very different mind. You know, when you're pulling down towards the ground or into the ground or allowing yourself to be so, then the mind can't think. So we're doing this all the time to give ourselves the opportunity to think. When I properly sink, this sense of sinking into the ground rather than just down onto it, then it's just all energy. And I just can't create my normal mental formations. And now let's try a bit of this one, the circle. Trying not to lean forwards too much with the spine. You're going down from the legs. You're bending the legs to get yourself down. It's the same thing. This leg is pulling me, and that's pulling me down towards the ground, but particularly it's sucking my spine down the leg. When you get it right, you just don't want to stick your bum out because that will create a break. And just changing direction. And then winding it down. Drop down. Again, using the legs, the bending of the legs pulls me down. And so there's a reluctance to go down. We know that pain in the legs and it's just uncomfortable. So there's part of us that fights that reluctance. So it's not as though I've just made a decision and just gone down in this sort of sloppy way. I want to feel the forces, the tensions involved in every action that I do. So there's part of me wanting to do it, but there's another part that's reluctant. And it's that fight, that contest that produces the energy, really. My knees are wanting to move together and my elbows are pushing them apart. Hands on the floor. Feel the earthing through the hands and the arms. A sense that energy from you is reaching into the ground, but also a sense that energy from the ground is reaching into you, coming all the way up to your spine and then creeping down the spine and up the spine to the sacrum and the skull. And then we'd like to feel that in the legs as well. We tend not to feel it in the legs because it's sort of happening all the time because our feet are on the ground so often. I want to feel that bleed. My legs are feeding into the ground and the ground is creeping up into my legs. So this is the root. It's the connection with the ground. The fact that part of you has gone into the ground and you have allowed the ground to come up into you. So where our feet touch the ground, we have a couple of roots, but also where my hand touches the other person, I also have a root, a sense that I'm extending into their body and allowing them to extend into me. It's not a general thing, it's very intimate and specific. So when I put my hands on the other person, I feel the energy going in, finding their bones and traveling through their skeleton, especially down to their feet, but really all everywhere. Then bringing the heels together and trying to balance like the sumo guys. They never get their heels anywhere near their buttocks because they've got so much fat on their legs. But we can get the real sense that our sitting bones are actually on top of the heels. So my feet are extensions of my sitting bones. Feel the wobble. It should be wobbling. Should feel ready to collapse. So part of me is having to really attend to this precarious balance. This is the Tai Chi mind. The Tai Chi mind is equilibrating, not thinking. And then just see if you can come up. Now moving side to side in order to step. This is the empty leg. It's the straight one to start with. And then I bend it to draw myself across. And then once I get more than 50-50, this is now basically the full leg, and this is the emptying one. So now this is the one that's straightening to really drive me down into this foot. This is what we want to begin to appreciate, is that when I simply go into the foot, I'm settled on the ground. If I want to get into the ground, I have to use force, basically. I have to really use this leg to force myself down into this one. Oh, and then use this leg to push. Oh, and use this leg to push. The pushing leg forces me in this direction, so into the outside edge of this foot, and also down. And down into the ground. Feel the outside edge like a scoop. In the same way that we reach forwards with the hand, and at the point where the shoulder blade comes away from the spine, that's where the hand starts coming back towards me. So when you release the shoulder blades or the sacrum, you're just producing curves, part circles, scoops. Pull into the leg. Now this one pushes me into the outside edge, which creates a stronger curve. So I get a sense that that is scooping a hole. And then that's what I sink into. So I pull here, and then this leg straightening scoops. And then I can just settle into that hole and just bring the other foot up. And then I just I'm a lot more balanced because I'm in the ground. I'm not on top of it. I pull, this leg forces me down, and then this foot can come up. You can think of the push, or you can see the push as sort of opening up a hole, or just feel it scooping a hole like a digger. And as soon as my knee collapses in and I come out of the outside edge, I've no longer got the hole to sink into. This is really important. This is why none of us developed a root, because we were just settling on that. We just weren't working hard enough. You've got to really work hard to get in the ground so that you can bring the other foot off the ground without compromising your balance. And if you don't feel it, then just see it. Just imagine that you've gone into the ground. And then slowly, with practice, imagination becomes reality. So I get a sense that I'm wanting to sort of become this sort of compact ball. So very much body as one unit. Okay, let's try just a bit stepping forwards and back, but with the same idea. Really what it is, it's the figure of 8 going around the foot. And then when we do this exercise, so the figure of 8 comes round, it goes into the inside of the heel, and then around the heel, around the outside edge, through to the big toe, and then the big toe pushing in the ground squeezes it across into this foot. So that's really just tracing the outside edge all the time. And that's really what we're doing here. So I sink into this foot. And again, even though my feet are close together, I want the feeling, I'm not just sinking down like this. I'm not just bending both legs. that would be double weighted. You know, that means both sides of my body are doing the same thing. I've got the feeling that this leg is bending, this leg is bending, and this leg, it's bending as well, but it's more straightening. It's more trying to really actively push me into this foot. So the beginning of the form, you know, where we bend the legs in order to step out with this foot, you can feel it as this leg is bending, this leg is sucking at the ground, and this leg is bending as well. Otherwise, I'll be doing this. But actually, it's pushing the ground to drive me into this leg so that I'm in the ground when I step. Around the foot, and then I step, and then I come around this foot. And I want the feeling that I'm going down into the ground. So I'm pulling with this foot, but now this leg has to really straighten to drive me down into it. And this leg straightens to drive me into this foot. Feel the active leg. The active leg is the empty one. It's not the bent one. This is supporting. This is keeping me still so that I can step. This is now active because it's empty. But now this one becomes the active one because it's empty. Now this is empty, so it pulls. Then this becomes empty by straightening. I'm straightening, I'm driving myself down. I'm bending, I'm straightening, driving me down here. Bending, straightening, driving me down here. And you can do this all the way through the form. In fact, you have to. And then you've just got real cross energy because the straightening here and the straightening here is just an expression of the energy that I've tapped by getting into the ground here. What's important is just that feeling of you've gone through the surface of the ground and you've got down into it. And then the other foot. So when I straighten this leg to push myself down in this one, I don't want that pressure to squash my leg. I want it to spring the joints open. So as I straighten here, this opens up. It feels like my hip and my sacroiliac sort of sprung apart a little bit. And it's that, if anything, that actually makes this hole open up so that you can get into the ground. So if I can be open, then things will open to me. So I pull, but now here I'm forcing an openness here, and that enables me to get down. And then I pull, and now again I'm squashing open this hole. Feel the spine splitting at the sacrum and extending down the backs of each leg. And again, that is the feeling of the root, the feeling that something has penetrated into the ground. So really, when we're rooting, it's our spine that's rooting through the leg. And for that to happen, you have to keep these joints open, any sense of them collapsing into themselves. And that will always be indicated by a collapse in at the knee. If I can keep my knee out as I sink, then it will help the hip and the sacrum release. It will also tend to stick my bum out, but that's just work. That's just sinking, sinking, sinking to try and keep this going down instead of going back. And then let's finish. So a little bit of this one. And the heel comes up, the energy's rising up. And when the heel goes down, the energy's sinking. So my root is very much through the heel. Feel the turning. As soon as I start doing opposite things with each side of the body, I turn. It's a bit like if you had a stick and you wanted to drive it into the earth, then you'd push, but you'd also twist it to work it in. It's the same with our turning. So when I sink the heel down, I'm turning, and that helps me sort of screw into the ground. Winding it down. But still got the figure of 8 inside each foot.